I think it's time for an oldie, but a goodie. So when I say old, I mean a commander that everybody was hyped about and then kind of promptly forgot about. And this happens with a lot of commanders, right? We get a really unique mechanic that seems really fun, and then players get another set of Magic the Gathering cards, and now suddenly they're worried about the next big thing, and the next big thing, and the previous big things kind of fall by the wayside. I don't want to just keep on talking about Aether Drift commanders right now, because there are some wonderful gems from the last 5 years that I think I want to focus on as well. And one of those wonderful gems is Volo Guide to Monsters. Now, if you've never made a Volo deck yourself, you are in for a treat. This is not only a fun deck to play, but a really fun deck to math out and build. And there's a lot of different trials and tribulations that come with building one of these guys. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Volo Guide to Monsters is a Simic and 2 3/2 human wizard, and that really does matter. And whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with one you control or have in your graveyard, you get to copy that spell, which means we have to play without humans or wizards. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not the worst thing in the world, since there's like a billion different creature types in Magic the Gathering. And when I say that, I'm not saying that for shits and giggles. I mean, like, literally, the list of creature types in Magic is quite expansive. There's a ton. Did you know that there's a single oyster in Magic? Because I didn't know there was a single oyster until I started building this deck out. So what I've learned when building this deck is not only do you need to have between 1 and 2 of every creature you care about, but those slots matter so much that you need to dedicate even more slots to making sure that you don't screw up your previous slots. Now, what does that mean, really? Well, there are some very common, very desirable creature types that you just really want to have more than one of in your deck. I'm talking cards like spirits. I'm talking cards like elves, frogs, merfolks, oozes. These are really common types. Shaman. These are very, very common types in Magic that decks will always have 1 or 2 of, just because they tend to get stapled on 2 things really easily, especially in Simic, right? Things just randomly become mutants or frogs in Simic for no good reason, and it probably has to do with something Ravnica lore. Hell if I know, but the real issue with that is it means that sometimes we do actually have to play 2 cards of the same type, which of course means that Volo's effect will not work on them unless we are willing to get rid of some cards in our graveyard. And I have made sure there are a few ways to do that in this deck, but for now, let's go ahead and talk about what the deck is going to be doing. We are, of course, playing a creature tokens style deck. We want lots of creature tokens on the board, and we want Volo to give us more of those tokens as the game goes on. So to facilitate that, we are going to be running a few cards that spawn tokens all on their own. First of which being the Hornet Queen. This is something you probably have in your bulk. It's been in almost every commander precon with green. It's basically green Satalpa. It's got flying, death touch, and whenever it enters the battlefield, make 4 1/1 green insect creatures that also have flying and death touch. If Volo is on our board, then Insect Queen is going to be giving us a massive board state of 10 creatures every time we play her. Rampaging Baloths is also great, but unfortunately the Beast archetype has lots of cards that we want to use, but we are going to be using Rampaging Baloths for one of our slots. Whenever a land enters our battlefield, we'll make a 4/4 green Beast. Now, we are not a landfall deck, but we have plenty of ways to get lands on the battlefield, and Rampaging Baloths effectively being 20 power for 6 mana as long as we play a single land is really hard to pass up. Watchful Ragstag gives us an Elk Mutant with Evolve. Whenever it evolves, we create a token that is a copy of it, and it evolves anytime a creature enters the battlefield with higher power than the Radstag. So when we play the Radstag, we'll have 2 Radstags, and then we'll have 4 Radstags as soon as we get a stronger creature, and then we will have 8 Radstags right afterwards. Ideally, we should be able to create a board state that is massive very, very quickly. We're also going to have something to supplement our Hornet Queen, and that is the Mirror Battlesphere. This does the same thing as her, makes 4 creatures that share a type with it, and those creatures are going to be colorless mirror artifact creature tokens. It's also got the ability to give us a bit of a burn clause on opponents who may or may not be protecting themselves from raw combat damage. Then we have Verdant Force. At the beginning of every upkeep, we'll make a 1/1 green Saproling token. So Verdant Force comes down as a 7/7, we get a copy of it, and then at every player's upkeep we will make 2 creatures. This means by the time a turn cycle has completed, we will have created 8 creatures and summoned 2 of those. We'll have a board state of 10 creatures, much like with the Hornet Queen, except unlike the Queen, this board state will continue to replicate. Then we have the aggressive Biomancy card. Create X tokens that are copies of any creature we control, and those tokens fight things on the board. Since we are already running creatures that really like being copied and entering the battlefield, using this to create several copies of, say, Hornet Queens that have flying and death touch will kill anything that you need on the board. Also, Verdant Force is a great thing to copy as well, because let's say you get 5 copies of Verdant Force out. Now you get a board of 25 creatures by the time your turn cycles over to you. And of course, all of those creatures will be aided by the next section, which is the power section. Cards that will modify the power of things on our board or will get more powerful on their own. The big one being Thunderfoot Baloth. This lieutenant creature says that as long as we control our commander, the Baloth gets 2/2, and other creatures we control also gain 2/2 and trample. Now, do note, this is a beast as well, so you will not be able to clone it if you've gotten Rampaging Baloths out, so please be aware of what's in your grave. Sometimes you will need to remove a beast from your grave before you play Thunderfoot Baloth later in the game after you've established a board state. We also have Loyal Rhino. The Loyal Rhino gives all of our creatures a 1/1 counter every single turn, as long as our commander's out, so if there's 2 of them, that's 2 1/1 counters. Managorger Hydra is a Hydra with trample that says whenever a player casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on the Hydra. Now, Managorger Hydra isn't great on its own, but let me paint you a scenario. On your turn, it's turn 4 and you've dropped Volo. Turn 5, you drop 2 Managorger Hydras. By turn 5, players are casting between 1 and 3 spells every single turn as they have the mana to do so. This means Managorger Hydra is gaining between 3 and 12 1/1 counters every turn cycle. That means by the time it gets to your turn 6, Managorger Hydra should be able, between it and its brother, should be able to deal about 20 damage to a single player who is a threat to you. Then we have the Murkfiend Liege, which gives all of your green and blue creatures 1/1, and if they are both colors, it will give them +2/+2. Also, we can untap all green and or blue creatures we control during each other player's untap step. Now, it should be noted that the Murkfiend Liege will power other Murkfiend Lieges up, so if we have 2 Murkfiend Lieges because of our commander, now suddenly we have a board state of 2 6/6 creatures that are letting us untap our mana dorks. We also have a couple of big payoff creatures that really like the tokens we're summoning. One of them is End-Raze Forerunners. This has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and if it enters, all other creatures we have get 2/2 Vigilance, Trample until end of turn. This means that not only do we get a 9/9 End-Raze Forerunners because of Volo, but our entire board gets +4/+4 Vigilance and Trample, meaning we get to deal 18 damage minimum, but if we've played a Hornet Queen or a Mirror, we have lots and lots of damage, like upwards of 40 or 50 damage. Then we have Diluvian Primordial, which enters the battlefield, and for every opponent, we can cast 1 instant or sorcery that they have in their graveyard. So if Volo is out, this should give us 2 instants and sorceries, so 6 spells total from all of our opponents. Most people, when they face down you casting 6 spells for free, will just scoop up their cards and walk away. Volo is also very important to the deck's strategy. The deck can work without Volo because it's just Simic good stuff, but you do want Volo to live, so we need a few ways to protect Volo, and one of those ways is going to be Giant's Amulet. When Giant's Amulet enters the battlefield, we can pay extra mana to make a giant, or we can just give it to Volo to give him Hexproof. Curator's Ward also gives him Hexproof and gives us a draw clause in case he dies, and Mirror Shield also gives him Hexproof and a small Death Touch protection as well. We'll also have a single creature that can act as a recursion piece, the Moldgraph Monstrosity. I would have liked to use more creatures like this, but they're all humans, dryads, or other things, which makes it kind of hard to work with Volo's ability. Moldgraph Monstrosity enters the battlefield, is a 8/8 trampler, and if it dies, we get 2 creatures at random from our graveyard onto the battlefield. Since we get 2 Moldgraph Monstrosities, that's 16 damage with trample on the board that our opponents have to contend with, which is worthwhile to me, to have 2 insects in the slot, I'm gonna say. Hopefully the deck is pretty self-explanatory. We just want to summon big, good Simic stuff and make our opponents die to value and big numbers. But we do need to make sure that one of the most important numbers is kept up during a course of a game, and that is the number of cards in our hand. Now, in my playtesting with Volo, I have noticed that one of its biggest problems is running out of resources because people tend to kill Volo or make the deck suffer in some way, shape, or form because nobody wants to deal with his good stuff nonsense. So to facilitate a bit of protection from that, we are going to run a very beefy draw package. Since we don't have to dedicate spaces to any cohesive game strategy, we can just focus on getting lots and lots of cards that will allow us to stay ahead of our opponents. So we're running 16 cards dedicated to draw. First one is going to be you meet in a tavern. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, grab any of the creatures from among them, and put them into our hand. We also can use it to win the game with a creatures you control get 2/2 until end of turn clause. Seraph's Packmate draws us a card when it touches the battlefield. Tomb Raider does the same thing. Owlbear does the same thing while also being a big beefy trampler. Generous Stray does the same thing. Loyal Drake draws us a card every turn if we have our commander. Then we have Earthshaker Dreadmaw, which can come down as a trampling creature that will draw us 2 cards, thanks to our commander. Then we have Eureka Moment to draw 2 cards and throw a land on the battlefield, Sky Scanner to draw a card when it touches the battlefield, Cold Eye Selkie to draw us a card based on however much damage it's dealing to people, Garrick's Pack Leader will draw us a card for every creature that comes out with power 3 or greater, Garrick's Uprising will do the same thing for power 4 or greater while giving our creatures trample. Then we have Induced Amnesia, which enters the battlefield, and a target player will exile all cards from his or her hand face down, and when this is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we can return those exiled cards to their owner's hand. Now, this is going to be great for making sure that if we have a hand filled with duds, we can throw it away real quick and wheel into a better hand, and then since we have a lot of creatures that blow up artifacts and enchantments, we can get those cards back by just cloning one of those creatures later in the game. Then we have Mole Drifter drawing us 2 cards whenever it enters the battlefield. We can also use Evoke when we do this. We have Caravan Carotid, which draws us a card when it touches the battlefield, is also a 2/5 with Defender, and is also kind of thick as fuck. Then we have Karuga, which says when it enters the battlefield, draw a card for every other permanent we control with mana value 3 or greater, which is most of the deck. It is also a dinosaur, so remember that it will non-bow with Earthshaker Dreadmaw as far as our commander is concerned, unless you have it thrown out of your graveyard. All in all, this should give you plenty of gas for your games, but you do need to make sure that your opponent's gas is also shut off. So let's talk about controlling all of their boards. A wonderful benefit of not having to worry about a central deck theme other than copy good stuff is that we get to run a higher than normal amount of removal. So 15 pieces of removal in our deck, with the first one being Myconoid Spore Tender. When it touches the battlefield, destroy an artifact or an enchantment. Voracious Varmint can be sacrificed to blow up an artifact or enchantment. Acidic Slime can blow up any artifact, enchantment, or land. Refute can counter any spell. It also gives us a draw discard ability. Negate can counter any non-creature spell, and Wizard's Retort can counter any spell, and if our commander is out, then it costs 1 mana less. Woodfall Primus can destroy any non-creature permanent on the board, and it's got Persist. Scavenging Ooze can be used to get rid of cards in your opponent's graveyards, but most importantly in this deck, we can also use it to sculpt our own graveyard so that we do not double up on important creatures. Then we have Kiga the Tide Star, which says when it dies, we gain control of target creature permanently. Because it is a legendary creature, what this really reads is pay 6 mana, get a 5/5 flyer, take control of an opponent's creature immediately. Your opponent will have no real choice in the matter. The legendary clause is going to take care of Kiga instantaneously. Selesnian Uologist has another clause like Scavenging Ooze, being able to get rid of things in a graveyard, but it has an extra benefit on top of what the Scooze does. It allows us to populate afterwards, letting us clone our already cloned clones. Malanthrope has flying, and if it enters the battlefield, we can exile target player's graveyard, which, of course, we can use on our own graveyard. It gets 1/1 for every creature card exiled this way as well, so we can get really massive. Terastodon can blow up any number, or any one of 3 non-creature permanents. For each permanent that's blown up, we get to give our opponents a 3/3 elephant. Terastodon is insane in a deck like this, because we get to pay effectively 8 mana to blow up 6 permanents, and end up with 2 9/9s. Then we have the Tigron Predator, which enters the battlefield and blows up any artifact or enchantment. But do note, it is a beast, and I lied, it's not entering the battlefield. It's when it deals combat damage to a player. Because Tigron Predator is a beast, it will non-bow with our other beast in the deck, so please be careful to sculpt your graveyards accordingly. Amphibian Mutineer is a Salamander Pirate that enters the battlefield and exiles a non-salamander creature when it does, and gives an opponent a 4/3 blue salamander in exchange for that. Then we have Duplicant, which enters the battlefield and exiles any non-token creature, and then takes on the power and toughness of that creature. Unfortunately, as for board wipes, we are going to be relying solely on aiming lots of removal at our opponent's board states and just being the problem as opposed to removing the boards ourselves. We are effectively playing a very, it feels mid-rangey and more aggro-y than it is, but we are playing a deck that is going to force board wipes more often than not. So play into player psychology for the most part. Though if you do want to run a board wipe, perhaps Ezreal's Predation, as it will wipe a board away while also giving you a board of tokens you can play with, which will then be benefited by cards like Thundering Baloth and Murkfiend Liege. But that choice is entirely up to you. That said, let's go ahead and get into our ramp. We are going to be running a 13-card ramp package, and a lot of these cards actually are creatures, which works really well with our commander. But let's look at what we've got here. First, we have Clifftop Lookout with reach and the ability to enter the battlefield and reveal cards from the top of our library until we hit a land, and then we get to play that land for free. Heaped Harvest can sacrifice itself to give us a land, and it also gives us a land when it touches the battlefield. Honored Heirloom, the rainbow rock that can go in any deck, is freaking amazing in here because it gets to get rid of things in the opponent's graveyards while also getting rid of things in our graveyard as we need them. Underseller Myconoid gives us Saproling creature tokens and also lets us make mana of any color. Growth Spiral draws a card and plays a land. Rampant Growth gets a land out of the deck. Search for Tomorrow gets a basic land out of the deck too, and Sakura Tribe Elder does the same thing, but it is a creature and a snake shaman. Get 2 of these with our commander, and then go off to the races by cloning them. Solemn Simulacrum gets us a basic land as well when it touches the battlefield, and when it dies, it will draw us a card. Scampering Surveyor does the same thing, but without the draw the card clause. Farhaven Elf does the same thing, but it is a 1/1 elf, and Elysian Dryad taps for a mana of any color, but if we've got a creature with power 4 or greater, which is most of our deck, then it will give us 2 mana of any color instead of 1. As far as lands, we're going to be running 13 forests and 9 islands, and the dual lands Exotic Orchard, Command Tower, Vine Glimmer Snarl, Overflowing Basin, and Flooded Grove, with a couple of noted cards. We have Temple of Mystery to sculpt our first hand, we have Simic Growth Chamber to bounce utility lands, and we have Tangled Islet because it says forest, and sometimes you just need to tutor a forest. Then we have fetching lands of Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Promising Vein, and Shire Terrace, with Myriad Landscape being our fetching land that can ramp us. Finally, we'll run the utility lands of Mosswort Bridge to give us free spellcasts, Ominous Cemetery to get rid of problematic creatures, and Pit of Offerings to get rid of problematic cards in our opponent's graveyard, as well as allow us to sculpt cards in our graveyard when things go awry and we double up on creature types. With 46 creatures, we have a lot of potential to double up on creature types. That said, I think that's pretty much everything that there is in the deck, so all that's left to do is talk about how to play it. As for opening hands, you really want some kind of ramp to get Volo out on turn 3, but if you don't have access to that, I think a hand with plenty of draw and protection for him will probably work just as well. This hand actually happens to have a Giant's Amulet in it, so I'm willing to keep it basically no matter what. We play Vine Glimmer Snarl and show our opponents this forest, and then tap it for the Giant's Amulet we'll use to protect Volo on subsequent turns. Turn 2, we've drawn the Hornet Queen, which will be great for a follow-up turn. For now, we'll play Flooded Grove. Next turn, we have the Cold Eye Selkie, and while I would love, absolutely love to use Cold Eye Selkie with our commander, for now, I want to get a board state that is able to do things. So we're going to go ahead and get Cold Eye Selkie out a little bit early. Next turn, turn 4, we have Rampaging Baloths in our hand. I think it's time to go ahead and play a island. And let's go ahead and tap everything and get Volo out on the board, hitting somebody with the Cold Eye Selkie to draw us a single card. Now we move into turn 5. We have a Temple of Mystery to sculpt the top card of our deck. It's a Mosswort Bridge, and since we know there's a Mosswort Bridge there, let's go ahead and pay 3 and get the Clifftop Lookout out, and it and its clone are going to pop onto the board. And the first one is going to give us that Mosswort Bridge for a follow-up. Mosswort Bridge comes down. Let's go ahead and use it to see what we have. I think we're going to keep this Mere Battlesphere. That's going to be our holdover for this. Let's go ahead and throw these to the bottom, and then our second Clifftop Scout will go off. We will look at the top cards, and there's an Ominous Cemetery. We can use that to take care of problematic creatures. That puts us in a pretty good spot. Hit somebody with the Cold Eye Selkie to draw a new card, and we'll move into turn 5. Let's play a forest, and the first thing we need to do is look at our board state. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lands. Volo definitely needs to be protected right now. If he is not protected, then things could go very, very south for us. So we have a turned over card under the Mosswort Bridge. Let's go ahead and pay 1 and 2, and let's put the Giant's Amulet on Volo, protecting him for subsequent turns. That leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards available. Now, as of right now, I think the correct move, as much as I would like to play the Hornet Queen, is to pay 1, 2, 3, and let's go ahead and get that Myconoid out. And it's a fungus, so we're going to get another Myconoid onto the battlefield. Then, we have 3 mana available. I think we hold up Wizard's Retort. We hold up Wizard's Retort, and we summon out that Mere Battlesphere if our opponent doesn't respond to it. So, let's go ahead and hit them with Cold Eye Selkie to draw a card. That is an island. We can go ahead and play that for turn. And then we will... Actually, we already played a land for turn. What am I doing? That's all we have to do. We pass to our opponent's turn, and let's assume that they did play a card we need to get rid of, so let's Wizard's Retort that to protect ourselves. Now we move into the next turn, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana available. On turn 7, 9, 10 mana available because of the Myconoids. With that 10 mana, I think the right thing is to go ahead and threaten our opponents very, very hard. Let's pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we will get out Rampaging Baloth number 1 and 2. And then we will play an island, which will allow us to spawn Beast Token number 1 and 2. Now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana available. We can tap 3 and play Sky Scanner, which we can get an extra 1 of, and we will draw 2 cards when we do so. We punch with the Cold Eye Selkie to draw 1 additional card, and there's the Endrace Forerunners. That's what we wanted to see. We pass to our opponents, holding up 2 mana. They don't know that we have the ability to cast a thing, but we want to make sure that our hand is safe. As we pass through steps and phases of our opponents, as we get to the last end phase for our opponents, we'll pay 2 mana, and we will flip over this Mere Battlesphere. And because it is casted, or it is played? Exile target card, then play it. So it is casted. Mere Battlesphere comes onto the battlefield with a copy of Mere Battlesphere, and the Mere Battlespheres come with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 Meres. Now we have an army of Meres at our disposal, and the 2 Mere Battlespheres. So when our turn comes up, we can play an island, spawning 2 more beasts. But the most important thing we get to do is tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. and we get to play Endray's Forerunners number 1 and 2. This will increase the power of all of our mirrors to 5/5. Our scanners become 5/5 as well. So that is 8, 9, 10. 10 times 5, that is 50 damage with just these tokens. The Rampaging Balos become 10/10s with Trample, so that is 70 damage. With the Beasts here, they are 8/8s each, so that is 78, 86 damage. The Undersettler Myconoids are hitting for 10, all the Frogs are hitting for 10, that's 20, so that is 106. And the Cold Eye Selkie will hit for 5. So that is 111 damage, and because Cold Eye Selkie draws cards based on the damage it does, 2, 3, 4, 5, we draw 5 cards off of that. We do 111 damage to our opponents and draw 5. That is the power of Volo. If he is not taken care of, his shenanigans is absolutely freaking stupid. But, what would you do if you had a little bit more money to invest in this deck, huh? If you're looking to upgrade this deck, I highly recommend a Sire of 7 Deaths. There is very little your opponents can do about something that says First Strike and Vigilance and Menace Trample, Reach, Lifelink, and a ward that nobody wants to pay, especially when there are 2 of them on the battlefield. Thing is insane. Speaking of multiple creatures on the battlefield, you probably want to protect them with a Heroic Intervention. This thing can make your board infinitely more resilient, especially when paired with a Lightning Greaves, so that you don't have to pay extra mana for protecting Volo. We can make more creature clones with For the Common Good. It also can protect our board state as well, and we can make our opponents shit their pants by playing 2 Avengers of Zendikar. You can definitely make sure that your removal suite is sculpted out even better with a Silverback Elder, as it gives us the modality of life gain, looking at the top cards of our library to get cards from them, or blowing up artifacts or enchantments. Blossoming Tortoise is a great ramp spell, and there's just not that many turtles in the game, so you always have access to this. Spark Double can give us an extra copy of Volo, so we get even more creatures out on the battlefield whenever we want. Quilled Great Worm can give us a huge advantage in power, because we already have so many creatures with lots of power. Quilled Great Worm will allow them to get that many 1/1 counters just anytime they deal damage. So the Selkie hits for 1, now it's a 2/2, Selkie hits for 2, now it's a 4/4. This thing is fantastic, especially when there are 2 of them. Then we have the Railway Brawler. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, it will gain X 1/1 counters, where X is the power of that creature. This thing is fantastic, and we can even plot it whenever we want. That way we don't have to spend a ton of mana on it when the time comes to cast it. Finally, Twinning Staff can be used as a win more piece to make sure that Volo is going the extra mile, especially in games where Volo is dying constantly. This card will stick around long term to allow you to sculpt boards that matter instantaneously, so even when Volo dies, you still have 3 creatures that you spawned from him. And, well, that does it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Volo's a really fun deck, and there's a bunch of different avenues you can take with this guide. Just remember to keep an eye on your board and your graveyard if you are not willing to go the extra mile of making sure you only have one type of creature 100% of the time. That all said, thank you for watching the video. Stay safe out there. Things are spooky outside of the doors where we play Magic the Gathering, so just make sure you've got friends and family around you during these trying times. That all said, thank you for watching, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full-time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full-time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.